Um, Hello and welcome to the CIArb PolicyCast, the show where we discuss current issues in the cutting edge of ADR. My guest today is Mr. Colin Rule. He's the Vice President of Online Dispute Resolution for Tidal Technologies, a veteran of more than 25 years in the dispute resolution field as a mediator, trainer, and consultant, as well as an ODR pioneer. He's the co-founder of one of the first online dispute resolution companies, Online Resolution, and has worked at the National Institute for Dispute Resolution, the Consensus Building Institute, and mediate.com. Mr. Rule has presented and trained throughout Europe and North America and has lectured and taught at some of America's top colleges and universities. He holds a master's degree from Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government in Computer Solution Technology, a graduate certificate in dispute resolution from UMass Boston, and a BA from Haverford College. First of all, Colin, if I may, welcome to the show. Great to have you on.
Thank you so much, Ludvig. Delighted to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
No worries. If you wouldn't mind, could you tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and some of your key experiences working in the field of mediation?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been working in the field of mediation for almost about 30 years. I was first trained in mediation by the Quakers when I went to Haverford College, as you mentioned, in Pennsylvania. And then I got a job working in Washington, D.C. in the early 90s for the National Institute for Dispute Resolution. So I'm a nerd. I love dispute resolution in all of its forms. But back then, there wasn't really much use of technology in the dispute resolution field. It was all very face-to-face. But I had spent a lot of time working with technology. I used to run a bulletin board out of my bedroom when I was 10 and 11 years old, which was a dial-up thing over 300 baud modems. You know, the current generation doesn't remember any of that, but it was all pre-internet. But then when the internet really started to take off in the mid-90s, I started to think, well, how are we going to resolve all these disputes that are going to arise from these e-commerce purchases and things like that? So I got involved with the development of the field we now call online dispute resolution, which largely arose in response to e-commerce. And then in 1999, I started a company called Online Resolution, which is one of the first ODR providers around the world. And that started me on the journey that I'm still on today. Some 20 years later, I wrote a book called Online Dispute Resolution for Business. I got hired at eBay and PayPal, and I ran their dispute resolution system for 8 years and then spun out a company called Modria. So now I'm delighted to say I've taken a gig back at mediate.com. I'm CEO of mediate.com and arbitrate.com, and we're really continuing to push the frontier of how technology can make dispute resolution more effective. So it's been a lot of fun, but I still feel like we're at the beginning.
It's such a cool business, and the work you're doing is amazing. And for nerds and wonks like us in the business, it's so fun to follow. I just wanted to follow up as well with what you said. And in your experience, are there some key differences between ODR and face-to-face mediation, more the classic sense, perhaps? And if I may, too, are there some features of ODR that cannot be replicated in traditional forms of mediation and vice versa?
You know, that's a great question and a rich question. When we were first building the ODR tools back in 2000, 2001, 2002, that was pre-iPhone, that was, pre-social network. We really just took offline processes and we replicated them online. I mean, it was exactly the same. The first website I built was onlinemediators.com, and it was essentially the same model for mediation that I had been trained face-to-face, uninterrupted storytelling, assisted storytelling, joint problem solving. So we just built it into a website. But what we started to see as technology evolved and we started to get more experience resolving cases was there's some pretty unique aspects of online interaction that can, some things can be a challenge in a dispute resolution process, but others can be an enormous boon. One of the things that technology enables, for instance, is the ability for parties to interact asynchronously. So instead of being logged into like a video chat or sitting across the table from each other, you can send messages, kind of like email, which enables parties to respond at their leisure. So you can actually do a little more research, you can be a little more thoughtful, you can work with counsel, you can work with the mediator. And what we found is that it creates a little cooling distance that can actually be very effective, and the parties really like it. The parties, once they're exposed to the use of these tools, they say, wow, this is great. This is the way I want to resolve, some of my disputes. Now, not all of my disputes. When I first started doing online dispute resolution, I had a policy, no family disputes. I just thought that family disputes were not a good fit. with technology. I was focused more, as I said, on e-commerce, kind of transactional relationships between strangers. But actually, as we started to get iPhones and we started to get more comfortable with technology, and the younger generation in particular, very comfortable with technology, they started to push back on me. The parties would come in and say, why not? Why can't we use this for our family dispute? And now we see an enormous flowering of technology in family disputes. In some respect, the most intimate face-to-face disputes, people are now willing to bring technology into those disputes. So you see divorce platforms like WeDivorce.com and it'sovereasy.com and HelloDivorce.com. The culture has really changed. And I had a friend tell me it's so creepy that you do online divorces. Like they just go to a website and then they can end their marriage. I said, well, how do you think people find their spouses these days? It's all swiping left and swiping right and plenty of fish and match.com. The technology has transformed every aspect of our lives, our working lives, our personal lives. So it's inevitable that it would also transform the way that people want to resolve their disputes. So now we have COVID and we have the pandemic, and the entire field with the flick of a switch has turned into an online field. I've been thinking about this for 20 years, and I've had some mediators and arbitrators that said to me, never, I'm not going to do this through technology. This is a face-to-face thing, over my dead body, in essence. And now those people are calling me saying, now, how do I change my Zoom background? And, like everyone suddenly we had to do it in 6 months. So people say to me now, they say, well, once we have a vaccine and, and the pandemic dies down, we'll go back to face-to-face. And I'm afraid to say I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think the party expectations have been changed. And now that we know how easy it is to use this technology and people have some experience with it, and studies have shown that it's almost as effective as face-to-face, I don't think we're ever going to go back to the world the way it was, 6 or 8 months ago. I think I wouldn't be surprised if 50% of dispute resolution moving forward happens through technological channels, just out of party preference, not because of necessity. So, and the other thing that's exciting is all the new technologies that are coming down the pike. I mean, who knows, with blockchain and smart contracts and artificial intelligence and virtual and augmented reality, all of these things sound like George Jetson kind of futuristic, but that was true of mobile devices and social networks, 20 years ago. So the question is not so much where we are today, it's where we're going. And I think that we all can see, just by looking at the vectors of the arrows, technology is going to be improving rapidly, and it's going to maintain its role as a core component of dispute resolution as the field evolves.
Yeah, I keep thinking of this Paul Krugman quote from the late '90s when he said that the internet wouldn't have any impact on the economy whatsoever. And
Right.
Paul Krugman is very competent. So I mean, even the bravest ones could fail sometimes.
Well, and
Um,
Bill Gates, there's a quote from him I think it was when the 386 came out, which was one of the earliest PC processors. He said, no person is ever going to need more power than this processor. There's just no reason why any individual would ever. It's like, well, okay, now, your cell phone has more computing power than all of the computers that NASA used to send a man to the moon. And
right.
people want it to go faster. They want to have more power, and just carry it in their pockets. So it's right. Prognostication is always a dicey business.
Well, actually, following up on that, I was wanting to ask you, seeing that this plethora of digital solutions coming into play within the legal field as a whole, I'm thinking especially big business law, and is this as this development is like slowly creeping into more and more areas of law as a practice? Could you share maybe any insights on where you think this development could be heading in the next, say, 5 to 10 years? And
Absolutely.
if there's any specific legal industry or industry job that you think might be risking obsolescence?
Well, I think it is interesting. The legal field has been slow to make this transition compared to other sectors of the economy. If you look at medicine, or if you look at finance, or you look at entertainment, excuse me, those industries have been completely transformed by technology. I was watching a movie Trading Places from the 80s, which was Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy, of kind of a funny comedy. And the end of that movie, they're on the floor of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. And the whole plot is, they're trying to buy low and sell high, in essence. And everyone in that movie, they're all stockbrokers wearing these little kind of colored jackets, holding up pieces of paper and shouting out their orders. Like, who wants to buy, 10,000 pork bellies? Who wants to buy this and that? And that was the way it worked back in the day. The stock exchange floors, it was manual. There were humans down there that would shout out these orders, and they would do these deals and then execute them on paper. Well, now if you go to the floor of essentially any stock exchange in the world, there's no people there. They've all been cleared out. And all of those jobs have been replaced by computers. Now computers engage in those trades much more efficiently and instantaneously almost. They happen in milliseconds. So all of the jobs of the people waving pieces of paper and shouting out their orders are gone. But there are more people working in finance than ever before. And the financial sector is bigger than it's ever been before. If anything, technology has made finance a more robust industry. So I actually think that's a pretty good guide for what's going to happen in the law. Now, the thing about the law is it's a monopoly because only lawyers and judges, can execute the justice system. If you don't like your court and you don't think they're treating you fairly, you can't say, well, I'm going to go to this other court and I'm going to use their services. So because it's a monopoly, it doesn't have much of an incentive to innovate and change. Now that's starting to change because I think the private sector is creating redress mechanisms. And I think we in the dispute resolution field are part of that change as well. We're creating alternatives to the traditional public state-backed redress processes. But I think what's going to happen is a lot of the lawyers out there and judges and court administrators, they're the equivalent of the people shaking the pieces of paper on the floor of the stock exchange. Once we have computers coming in to handle a lot of these administrative tasks and automate document creation and do a lot of the things that computers are good at, I think some of those jobs are going to go away. And those people are very nervous about that because, as Upton Sinclair, a famous US writer, wrote, it's almost impossible to get someone to understand a truth if their paycheck is dependent on them not understanding that truth. And I think that there are a lot of people in the law that have this attitude, like, no way, I'm not going to change. But you can shake your fist all you want, but the rainstorm will still come over you. And I think technology, this technological change is inevitable. And now we're seeing it start to affect the law. Now, I believe there are going to be more people involved in redress and global legal services after this technological change than there are today. But much like in finance, people who used to do the paper exchange on the floor, now they're sitting in cubicles programming the computers that do those exchanges. And that's what's going to happen to the law. We're going to have people that are sitting in cubicles essentially writing the agents, writing the platforms, writing the software that can provide fast and fair resolutions in all of these cases. And it's going to enable us to massively expand access to justice and provide fairer, more consistent outcomes. So we're actually going to do a better job delivering on the values and priorities of the legal fields, the judicial system, and the dispute resolution field. But it is going to be a change. And it does mean that jobs are going to change and some jobs are going to go away, but many new jobs are going to be created. So, my grandfather always used to say back in Texas, don't build your business where the highway is, build your business where the highway is going. And I think if you're going to be practicing for more than 5 years, you got to think about what these changes are, and you need to get new skills and learn how you can benefit from some of these changes. So that's a lot of what I'm trying to do in the field, is help it go through this transition.
Yeah, well, actually, that kind of links up perfectly with my next kind of query, which was about being working in tandem with the legal field, as we usually perceive it, but without a traditional legal schooling, perhaps, or background. And I was thinking of yourself, that has had almost 3 decades now working in mediation, and is considered a consummate legal professional in that sense, I'd say.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. But I was just thinking, in your opinion, what are some of the biggest challenges of breaking into the ADR, ODR world as someone without a traditional legal background? And what are the upsides or perhaps downsides that you have experienced, but through kind of entering the industry with that approach?
Well, it's an excellent question. When I first was working at the National Institute for Dispute Resolution, everyone who worked there, all my superiors, all my managers, they were all lawyers. And I remember going to a mentor of mine, a guy named Tom Fee. And I said, Tom, do I need to be a lawyer to do this work? And he said, not anymore. At the beginning, you had to have a law degree to do this work, but now you can have any background. You can be a sociologist, you could be a political scientist, you could be, all these different pathways into the field. And I took that to heart. And as you mentioned, I got a degree in public policy. Now, I'm what they call an NLM, a non-lawyer mediator. And there are many of us in the field who came up through other paths than the JD, but I teach at law schools. I mean, I've taught at law schools. I teach at Stanford Law School. I teach at Santa Clara Law School. I deal with lawyers and young lawyers all the time. And I do feel like I'm well positioned to help them think through what these changes mean for their career. Because I think traditionally legal education has been about working in a firm and arguing cases in a court. And, it's very precedent based. And if you look at the bar exam, again, it's very backward looking. If you go to a business school gives you a lot of skills. Like, here's double entry accounting. Here's how you do marketing and sales. Here's how you do a business plan. And then they say, go invent something. I mean, they don't tell you what you're going to use those skills to do. They want you to be entrepreneurial. They want you to be future oriented. So you can learn from cases, you can learn from that past experience, but then you have to apply those to a new challenge. Whereas I think the law, at least a lot of my observation of legal education, it's like, this is the law. This is how you think like a lawyer. This is what a lawyer does. And learn all these things. And once you get these skills, we'll go give you a job where you can do these things. And it's not, legal education traditionally has not been very entrepreneurial. It's not been very, go invent a new field, go figure out how these things are going to work moving forward. But I think that is an important reorientation we need to make in legal education. As I said, a lot of lawyers who insist to work on working the old way, face to face, and getting the retainer and billing for their time in 8-minute increments, that portion, that pie is going to be shrinking over time. Now, that's not to say it's going to go away. We're still going to have high dollar value commercial litigation that's going to work the old way, just the ICC, Chartered Institute, we're going to have those big cases. But what we're going to see is, particularly in the lower dollar value cases initially, there's going to be a lot more use of technology to resolve those processes more efficiently. And what we're going to see is lawyers and legal experts, and yes, dispute resolution experts as well, we're going to become systems designers. And we're going to be writing software and writing systems that can deliver resolutions at scale. And the expertise that we have around ethical systems design and creating a level playing field and ensuring, procedural justice, that expertise is crucial in designing those systems. It doesn't mean we all have to be coding Java. No, there's plenty of developers that can actually write the software, but we need to design the systems. We need to monitor them. We need to evolve them. We need to make sure that all of these new technological tools that we're building are in line with our ethical objectives and ethical obligations in the field. And that's not an easy thing to do. It's going to take decades for us to get that right. So, I think personally, again, I'm an optimist. I'm a glass half full kind of guy. There's going to be many more people working in the law, and we're going to have a much more just and accessible system in the future. But there is going to be a lot of, bumpiness between here and there because certain jobs are going to go away and other jobs are going to be created. And it's not easy to go through that kind of transition. But we have to go through that transition, in essence, is my perspective.
Thank you so much. It's very insightful. I'm sure there are plenty of young lawyers out there, as myself, that takes great confidence in that answer, that there are alternative routes forwards.
Sure.
I won't keep you for much longer, but I wanted to, before we go, ask you if you had maybe one industry insight or interesting tidbit that you think isn't really getting its time in the limelight that you could share with us.
Wow, that's a really great question because there's so much that's going on, Ludvig. So it's difficult for me to pick. I will say that I think that, COVID has really legitimized video conferencing. And now Zoom, I think, is the new telephone. If you say to someone, oh, let's Zoom, and you send them a Zoom number, it's great. Everybody has the experience of Zooming. And the platform is very stable. It's very high quality. I mean, you're in Stockholm. I'm here in San Jose. You are crystal clear. I can almost see you more clearly than if we were sitting across the table from each other. And that would have saved me a 20-hour plane flight with all of the various carbon emissions and time change difficulties. So I think video, is kind of the gateway drug. And I think now that we have video as sort of a new normal, what we need to do is we need to open people's minds towards how technology can expand and accentuate the practice of dispute resolution as I mentioned, in asynchronous ways, in crowdsourced ways, using crowdsourced juries of dispute resolution providers around the world. As I mentioned, artificial intelligence. We need to be collecting data and gathering enormous amounts of data so that we can train the machine learning algorithms of the future to deliver resolutions at a de minimis cost. People often say that, well, hey, this technology is going to displace me. I don't want it. I don't want machine learning and artificial intelligence because then it's going to take my job away. And I absolutely disagree with that. I think technology is like the fourth party in a dispute. That was what Ethan Katz, the father of ODR, he wrote that concept. So party one and party two are the disputants. Party three is the neutral, the arbitrator or the mediator. And technology has a seat at the table. And we call that the fourth party. And the third party and the fourth party are partners. And what that technology, as it gets smarter and more competent, it provides almost superpowers to the third party, but it enables the third party to focus on the human aspects of the dispute and do what uniquely that human neutral can do that the technology can't do. So as technology gets more competent, I think that helps us be more human and more focused on the needs of our parties. So I'm excited about it, and I think people need to be open to partnering with the fourth party. Don't fear technology. Learn from it, integrate it, put it into your toolbox, know how it works so that you know when to use it, when not to use it. It's not good in every circumstance, but I do think that this is going to be good for all of us as we move forward, and I have a lot of optimism about the future. It's just we just got to get from here to there. So that's my takeaway.
I'm sure that we will have plenty of time to evaluate those predictions in the coming years and months, especially now with the virus and all going on. Colin, again, thank you so much for being with us. And
Thank
I
you,
hope
Ludvig. This was fun.
Likewise, I hope you're staying safe in California.
Same with you. I think Stockholm's doing much better than we're doing here in California, but hopefully we'll get on the other side of this sometime in 2021.
Indeed. So good to talk to you. Take care.
Okay, take care.